Joffrey Baratheon is one of the most brilliantly written characters in the entire Game of Thrones series. He's a character we all simply love to hate. In addition to the character's book-written brilliance, Jack Gleeson's on-screen portrayal of the brutal young king is just incredible. He brings so much life into the character, and I know I'm not the only one who was desperate for Joffrey to get his comeuppance as the episodes and seasons progressed. In this video, I'm going to take you through the entire life of Joffrey Baratheon based on the book while using fan art and scenes from the show as references. Welcome to Game of Thronelore. This is the life of Joffrey Baratheon. Joffrey was born to Cersei and Jaime Lannister, but was portrayed as the son of King Robert Baratheon in order to avoid scandal, treason, and keep Cersei and Jaime's relationship a safe secret. He was the older brother to Prince Tommen and Princess Myrcella, both of which were also Jaime's children and, like their brother, passed off as Robert's. Joffrey grew up as a spoiled and indulgent child with a cruel streak within him. He appeared to have very little remorse and found it difficult to differentiate between what was right and wrong, or perhaps he simply didn't care about morals. King Robert Baratheon is deeply disappointed with his son and feels little affection for him. It appears that Joffrey craves Robert's respect and approval, and many of his acts are done in an effort to live up to his father's standards. However, Joffrey's acts always seem to be acts of which would put himself at no harm or at risk, and his father could see that. An example of Joffrey's lack of remorse was learning that the kitchen cat was pregnant. He killed the animal and cut open its belly to see the kitten's inside. He showed one of the unborn kittens to his father. Robert was so shocked and angry, he hit Joffrey so hard it knocked out 2 of his baby teeth. The frightening thing was that the boy seen no wrong in what he did. He had no respect for life or the consequences of ending a life, something which would reflect a much heavier shadow after he ascended the Iron Throne. Queen Cersei believed Robert would have beaten the boy regularly if she had allowed it. She assigned Sandor Clegane to be her son's sworn shield. While Sandor is widely known as the Hound, Joffrey refers to his guardian as Dog, once again a sheer lack of respect from the boy. Joffrey's story begins in A Game of Thrones, the first novel. He and the rest of the royal family take the King's Road to Winterfell after Lord Jon Arryn's death, as King Robert Baratheon asks Lord Eddard Stark to become the new Hand of the King. Joffrey begins to court the pretty Sansa Stark, Eddard's eldest daughter, to whom he has been betrothed. He also spars with Robb Stark in the yard and insults him, showing early signs of the character many of us would come to loathe. When Bran Stark is critically injured after falling from the first keep, Joffrey's uncle, Tyrion Lannister, slaps Joffrey for speaking rudely of Bran's condition. Tyrion is unexpectedly blamed when an assassin with a Valyrian steel dagger that apparently belonged to Tyrion fails in an attempt to murder the comatose Bran, which furthers the growing enmity between House Stark and House Lannister. However, this animosity doesn't appear to represent Robert and Ned's views, as their friendship appears very strong. Joffrey then spends a day riding and drinking wine with Sansa. They come upon Arya Stark, Sansa's sister, and her friend Mika, a butcher's boy, who are practicing sword fighting. A drunk Joffrey commands Mika to spar with him. When Mika does not take up the challenge, Joffrey pricks him with his sword, Lion's Tooth, while ignoring pleas to leave the boy alone. Arya smacks him with her stick, allowing Mika to escape. An enraged Joffrey slashes at Arya, but is injured when her direwolf Nymeria protects her. Arya takes Lion's Tooth from him and hurls it towards the trident. Humiliated and in pain, Joffrey angrily lashes out at Sansa while Arya and Nymeria flee. Joffrey later claims before his father's court at Darry that he had been attacked by Mika and Nymeria.
Yes, it is. They all attacked me and she threw my sword in the river.
Liar!
Search parties are sent out to find Mika, Nymeria and Arya. Sandor Clegane rides down Mika, while Sansa's direwolf, Lady, is executed after Queen Cersei Lannister interferes. This earns Joffrey the hatred of Arya. Robert's younger brother, Lord Renly Baratheon, openly laughs at his nephew for being beaten and disarmed by a girl much younger than him. While drinking with Ned at the Hand's Tourney at King's Landing, King Robert openly despairs of his son and heir, revealing to his old friend that he often thought of abdicating. The only thing that stops him is the thought of Joffrey sitting on the Iron Throne with his mother whispering in his ear. Acting as the new Hand, Ned Stark discovers that Joffrey, along with his siblings, are actually bastards born of incest between Cersei and her twin, Sir Jaime of Robert's Kingsguard. Robert never actually questioned the boy's parentage. Cersei protects her children's secret by arranging for Robert's death by increasing the strength of his favourite wine, which he drinks while hunting in the Kingswood. Cersei gets her wish. Robert becomes extremely drunk on this hunt and is fatally wounded. He calls Ned to write his will. Following Robert's death, Joffrey summons the council and commands that they make arrangements for his coronation as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. When Ned produces Robert's will, which declares Ned regent and mentions the heir rather than specifying Joffrey as heir to the Iron Throne, Cersei tears it up and advises Ned to swear fealty to her son. Ned in turn reveals that Joffrey has no claim to the throne.
Your son has no claim to the throne.
Liar!
And that his uncle, Lord Stannis Baratheon, is the true heir, but Eddard is quickly arrested for treason. After taking the Iron Throne as Robert's heir, Joffrey starts his first court session by naming his grandfather, Lord Tywin Lannister, as the new Hand of the King, appointing his mother to the Small Council, and Jaime Lannister as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and dismissing the legendary knight Barristan Selmy from his service, against all traditions. When Barristan storms out in disgust, making a remark about the ease with which Stannis would take the throne from him, Joffrey orders Barristan seized and questioned, though the old knight escapes. The vacancy on the Kingsguard is filled by Joffrey's sworn shield, Sandor Clegane, the first person to serve on the Kingsguard without having earned a knighthood. Further, during the court session, Sansa, to whom Joffrey is still betrothed, kneels and begs for him to spare her father Eddard's life, asking that Joffrey to do this for his love of her. Joffrey promises Sansa that he will be merciful. However, after Eddard confesses his crimes and declares that Joffrey is the true heir to the Iron Throne, Joffrey's mercy turns out to be Eddard's public beheading by Sir Ilyn Payne before Sansa's eyes at the Great Sept of Baelor. This rash act is against his family's wishes to minimise further bloodshed and restore the king's peace, and actually leads to the intensification of hostilities. Eddard's son Robb captures Jaime in the Whispering Wood and is declared the king in the north at Riverrun after the Battle of the Camps. Robb intends to kill Joffrey in retaliation for Ned's death, plunging Westeros into a devastating civil war. Joffrey continues to mistreat and abuse Sansa, a penalty for each of Robb's victories. Forcing her to look at her father Eddard's severed head is the start of a string of beatings he commands his Kingsguard to abuse her with. He threatens to force her to look on her brother Robb's head when he kills him, as he boasts in single combat. Joffrey fancies himself a warrior and considers leading the city watch of King's Landing into the field. Cersei withholds the news of Renly's coronation at Highgarden from Joffrey, lest he insist on marching against them. In a clash of kings, Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone and the brother of King Renly and the late King Robert, has his supporters spread the message that Joffrey and his siblings Prince Tommen and Princess Myrcella are bastard abominations. Stannis presses his own claim to the Iron Throne. After Renly's death at Storm's End, Stannis hopes to present Robert's bastard, Edric Storm, as proof that Joffrey is illegitimate. During a small tourney held to honour the boy king's name, Sansa convinces Joffrey to spare the life of the drunken Ser Dontos Hollard, who becomes Joffrey's new fool. While Tywin Lannister is Joffrey's Hand of the King, Tywin is on campaign during the War of the Five Kings. Tyrion Lannister, Tywin's son and Joffrey's uncle, acts as Hand in Tywin's stead. Joffrey rules with whim and caprice, proving difficult for even his mother to control. Sansa becomes imprisoned to his will, and he frequently has his Kingsguard, with the exception of the Hound, beat her when she displeases him. When he tries to have her stripped, however, he is stopped by Tyrion. Although Joffrey never tries it again, he is determined to eventually have Sansa in his bed, whether he marries her or not. Joffrey's cruelty and the decreased quality of life at King's Landing due to food shortages and other hardships make him a very unpopular king, and he is nearly killed in a riot sparked by his own temper. Acting as his temporary hand, only Tyrion stands up to Joffrey's authority, and the king develops a special hatred for his uncle. Tyrion, in return, holds his nephew in contempt, viewing him as a monster. During the Battle of the Blackwater, Joffrey wears a gilded mail and enamelled crimson plate, with a golden line on his helm, and he carries a new blade, Heart-Eater. The king commands the three whores during the battle. When Stannis' men begin to attack the gate of King's Landing, Cersei Lannister has Sir Osmond Kettleblack bring the king to the safety of the Red Keep. Although this leads to many of the Gold Cloaks abandoning their posts and the Hound's fear of wildfire causing him to flee, Stannis is ultimately defeated by the arrival of Lords Tywin and Mace Tyrell. Following the battle, Joffrey rewards many of his survivors in the throne room. The king puts aside his betrothal to Sansa and instead promises to wed Margaery Tyrell, Mace's daughter and the widow of Renly. He is excused from court after cutting his arm on the Iron Throne. Lord Tywin Lannister then reclaims his position as Joffrey's Hand of the King, replacing Tyrion. Most of Stannis Baratheon's supporters who survived the Blackwater submit to Joffrey. Sansa Stark informs Olenna Tyrell, Margaery's grandmother, of Joffrey's cruel personality, and Tywin arranges the marriage of Sansa to Tyrion instead, and Joffrey intends to be present for the wedding. The king is outraged when Tyrion threatens to geld him in defense of his new wife. However, Joffrey is delighted when he hears of Robb Stark's death at the Red Wedding and wants his head so he can serve it to Sansa at his own wedding, in addition to wanting to show no mercy to the Northern and River Lords who surrendered following Robb Stark's death. Tywin instructs Joffrey to be merciful in victory, but then sends the king from the Hand Solar when Joffrey is insulting in response. Prior to his wedding, Joffrey receives a golden heart bow from Jalavar Zoe, riding boots from Tandis Stokeworth, a jousting saddle from Kevin Lannister, scorpion brooch from Oberyn Martell, silver spurs from Adam Marbrand, and a tourney pavilion from Mathis Rowan. The king is presented with a model of war galley by Paxter Redwine, who says King Joffrey's valor is being built for him at the Arbor. Tyrion gives Joffrey a rare book, Lives of Four Kings, and Mace gifts him a 7-sided wedding chalice. Tywin gives his grandson a Valyrian steel sword as a wedding present, which Joffrey names Widow's Wail. Joffrey slices Lives of Four Kings with his new sword, demanding a better present from Tyrion and Sansa. Since Joffrey boasts that he is no stranger to the metal, Tyrion thinks that Joffrey is referring to the Valyrian steel dagger given to the assassin at Winterfell, though he is unable to fathom why. Jaime later deduces that Joffrey did it in an attempt to impress his father after overhearing a drunken Robert say it would be kinder to put the crippled Bran Stark out of his misery. Joffrey's marriage to Margaery in 300 AC is on the first day of the new century at the Great Sept of Baelor. During his wedding feast in the Red Keep's throne room, Joffrey pours wine from his new chalice atop a Tyrion when his uncle refuses to join the dwarves reenacting the War of the Five Kings, and the king forces Tyrion to serve as his cupbearer. Joffrey is poisoned after eating pigeon pie and drinking wine, and he dies while the entire court looks on, his face turning black as he asphyxiates while tearing at his throat. Cersei blames the deed on Tyrion and Sansa. While Tyrion is taken into custody by the Kingsguard, Sansa escapes King's Landing with the aid of Peter Baelish, known as Littlefinger. He reveals that he orchestrated the entire plot with Olenna Tyrell, and due to the colour of the amethysts in the unknowing Sansa's hairnet used to poison Joffrey's wine, and the actual colour of the wine, the wedding has since been referred to by the fans as the Purple Wedding. Joffrey is laid in state in the Red Keep's sept in gilded armour, and when Jaime returns to King's Landing, he visits the boy king. Joffrey is ultimately laid to rest in the Great Sept of Baelor. Because Joffrey was poisoned, Jaime tasks Sir Boros Blunt with tasting all of King Tommen Baratheon's food and drink. However, he refuses to recognise Joffrey as his son. During Tyrion's trial for Joffrey's death, witnesses downplay the king's behaviour and exaggerate Tyrion's actions. Tyrion therefore demands trial by battle, and he is represented by Oberyn Martell, who seeks vengeance for the death of his sister, Elia of Dorne, who was killed years ago by the Crown's representative Sir Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain. The Mountain kills the Red Viper in combat, however, and Tyrion is deemed to be guilty by the gods. Before Tyrion can be executed for Joffrey's death, Jaime frees his brother from the dungeon. Angry at Jaime for having deceived him about his first wife Tisha, Tyrion lies and takes responsibility for Joffrey's death. Joffrey, with the exception of his mother Cersei, is not particularly mourned by anyone. Even his biological father Jaime, he feels that Joffrey deserved his fate and wants Tommen to be different. Tyrion believes that Joffrey would have become a worse king than the Mad King. Aerys Oakheart thinks the only good thing that could be said of Joffrey is that he was tall and strong for his age. Because of Joffrey, Sir Kevin Lannister considers Cersei to be an unfit mother. His younger brother, the new King Tommen, weds his widow Margaery Tyrell. Cersei is troubled by Tommen's meekness in comparison to Joffrey, and because Myrcella is older than Tommen, Arion Martell tries, but fails to crown Myrcella as queen. Although he didn't rule for long, Joffrey Baratheon will always be remembered for his cruelty and lack of remorse. Many believed he deserved his fate, and were happy not to see how the boy's rule would have developed in future years.